Tennessee reminds me a lot, mostly, of the Kansas City Chiefs.
You are Locked On College Football, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth, whatever that may be. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Use code LOCKEDONCollege after creating an account, of course, to get $20 off your first purchase. USC is stuck with Lincoln Riley for the foreseeable future, whether they like it or not. Meanwhile, the team that supposedly jump-started LSU's season, USC's season rather, LSU, they look really, really good. And also, someone's going to win the Big 12. I don't know. I don't know who it's going to be. Winners and losers in the Big 12. But the biggest winner in college football from this past week, Tennessee. Yeah, even more so than Georgia. Because Tennessee still had Georgia on the schedule. Now, Georgia's got Tennessee on the schedule, of course. But Tennessee beats Alabama for the second time in 3 years. Doesn't just represent a shift in a rivalry that has been dominated for Alabama literally my entire life as a college football fan until the last few years. But here's why the Vols remind me of the Chiefs in the NFL. I don't know that there's another Chiefs out there, but just in case, thought I'd clarify. Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, those sorts of guys. You need to shift the way you look at Tennessee and the way you think about Tennessee. When the Vols first beat Alabama a couple of years ago, final score of the game 52-49. They ascend to number one in the AP poll. They didn't end up having the rest of the season they were hoping for, didn't get into the college football playoff, but they were there because they were playing phenomenal, explosive, dynamic offense. And so with Josh Heupel at the helm, who's an offensive guy, and with a big-time quarterback name like Nico Iamaleava, you look at Tennessee and all the weapons they have at the running back position, at the wide receiver position, and think to yourself, that's an offensive team. No. This is exactly the same sort of paradigm shift, and this is not a bad thing. This is just a reality. It's the same thing the Chiefs underwent. They could have paid Tyreek Hill. Nah, we're good. We'll let him go to the Dolphins. And the Chiefs have had this rolling cadre of mediocrity at the wide receiver position, and they've just relied on a great quarterback. What else have they done? Oh, yeah, their defense rocks. It's really good. And that's where Tennessee is at. That was the best defensive performance I've ever seen from a Tennessee team under Josh Heupel. And it's the most underrated part of why Tennessee's good. I've said for a long time this season, one of the most underrated units in all of college football is the Texas defense. Well, they got exposed a little bit by Georgia. You can put Tennessee into that conversation as well. Their defense hasn't been good this year. It's been great. No one, not a single team. Vols have played 7 games this season. No one has scored 20 points on them. 3, 10, 0, 15, 19, 17, 17. That's what the Tennessee defense is now. This is not an offensively led team. This is a defensively led team, and they are darn good. You know the name James Pierce because he's a preseason All-American. I'm here to tell you, if you just watched Tennessee for the first time, they've got a bunch of dudes up front. That might be the best defensive line in the SEC. I include Georgia in that conversation. Now, their defense was phenomenal against Texas on Saturday night. And a big win for the Bulldogs. And I'll talk about that more in just a moment. But Tennessee's defensive line, I watched just about every single snap in this particular game. I felt like they were in the Alabama backfield, overwhelming the Crimson Tide up front on 70% of the plays, run or pass. It might have even been higher than that. So this Tennessee defense is championship caliber. And if you can just get Nico to stop overthrowing, like, does he put extra helium into the ball? There are so many open guys that he misses throughout the course of the game. That might cost Tennessee a game at some point this season, but he made the throw when he needed to in the fourth quarter, and that defense is legit. So when you think of Tennessee, you think of them as an SEC title contender, you think of them as a potential national championship caliber team. The only thing that will hold them back from reaching that particular threshold, either of those thresholds, is whether or not they can string together the offense. They were held scoreless in the first half again. That's not a recipe for success. Nico needs to grow up quickly for Tennessee, or they will be a really good team, but not a really great team that has a really good season and not a really great season. But that defense is legit. Absolutely mauled Alabama on the offensive line. Crimson Tide couldn't run the ball. Jalen Milroe was under pressure, and they turned him over again and again and again. I don't know. There were a lot of turnovers in that particular football game, including by the Tennessee backup quarterback who did his best imitation of Brucey from the longest yard. Brucey's time to shine. Throws an interception on that play. But props to Tennessee. That was a really impressive win. The defense is really good. Georgia goes to Texas, gets a win. Well, I thought they would. So Tennessee gets the outright win label here on the show. That's my assessment of how the fan base should be feeling after the win. You can put this as an outright win for Georgia if you like. For me, this is a lean win because it's exactly what I expected. And Georgia's already got a loss on the resume to Alabama on the road, which, isn't looking quite like the loss it was a few weeks ago. But alas, it's still Alabama, and they're still a good team, and I'll get to them more in just a moment as well. But Georgia is in a good position here. Number 2 team in the country. They control their own destiny to do anything and everything they want this season. Had to win that football game. Had to win that football game for that to continue to be the case. Lo and behold, they did. Surprise of the year, a veteran quarterback with the same offensive coordinator as last year, and Kirby Smart, maybe the best head coach in all of college football. They made some adjustments. They figured things out. I wasn't that surprised. I'm not trying to downplay the Georgia win. It's a huge statement. It's just I expected them to do it. So they get a lean win label for me there. But that's a really good win for the Georgia Bulldogs, and it's a pretty bad loss for Alabama. What's been the problem with the Crimson Tide? This is an outright lose for Alabama, by the way. They've lost for the second time before the month of November, for the first time since Nick Saban's first season back in 2007. I'm not pressing the panic button on Kalen DeBoer, even if they don't make the playoff this year. The guy's going to be fine. Look at the way he's recruiting. Look at his track record as a head coach. Yeah, I thought they'd go 11-1 this year. That's already out the window. They could still go 10-2 and get into the playoff. Here's the good news. Kalen DeBoer is an offensive guy. Jalen Milroe hasn't looked right the last few weeks. Didn't again against Tennessee. Had an issue protecting the football. What do you trust more for a Kalen DeBoer-led team to figure out? The offense or the defense? Well, the defense played really well. Alabama's defense did everything they could to win that football game. But Alabama couldn't move the ball down the field against the Tennessee defense, which, as I said, is really good. But Alabama didn't used to have that particular problem with anybody in the country when they needed a drive. And Milroe throws a pick on the very first play, and it's just a bad throw. It's well defended by Tennessee. It's just a bad throw. It's the right read, it's late, and it's a bad throw. That's what Jalen Milroe feels like he's been doing a lot over the last couple of weeks. But the defense is showing signs of progress. The defense is showing some growth. They pitched a shutout in the first half on the road. Neyland Stadium's on fire, and Alabama doesn't seem to care. Defense makes it work, and the offense can't execute. And Milroe again can't protect the football. Got to clean those things up. Got to clean those things up. And if you don't, Alabama won't make the playoff this year. And a lot of people everywhere will rejoice. But I'm not pressing the panic button on the long-term outlook of Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. I'm pressing the panic button on you need to win every game you play in the regular season, or else there will be no postseason worth enjoying in Tuscaloosa, because 9-3, I don't think it's getting you into the playoff, even though Vanderbilt is a top 25 road loss. How about it? How about Vanderbilt? Once upon a time on this show, I interviewed Jordan Rodgers, and I gave him flack about Vanderbilt, because it's Vanderbilt. And guess what? Clark Lee's got him in the top 25. How about them Commodores, huh? What a wild, crazy, awesome week in the SEC. More to get to because LSU is really impressive. but USC beat them in week 1. And everything was going to be better, just as I foresaw. And it's a disaster in Los Angeles, and they're stuck with it. That's coming up next. First, this episode brought to you by ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink. It's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best tomorrow. As someone who has used this product prior to consuming alcohol throughout the day, I got to tell you, I felt great during, I felt great after. I was enjoying plenty of drinks. It was a good time. And guess what? This stuff works. This stuff works phenomenally well. You will feel great all day. You'll feel great the next day. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use Locked On College at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege. Use code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. USC is stuck with Lincoln Riley. This is a 10-year contract, over $100 million. The buyout's north of $80 million. You're stuck with him. It's a complete and utter mess. The buyout isn't the only reason you're stuck with him. If Lincoln Riley goes to his athletic director at the end of the year, Jen Cohen, and does a performance assessment, you know what he will be able to say? We beat LSU. Look at how good the Tigers are. The Tigers are the second half of this particular segment because they were really impressive. And as always, I'm not going to do a switcheroo here with LSU. That's a good football team with a quarterback that I really, really like, but I'll get to that in just a moment. So USC is just in a complete and total free fall. And more than anything else, USC somehow has just forgotten how to win football games. This is not year 1 or 2. This is year 3 for Lincoln Riley. The culture of winning that he had established in Norman, Oklahoma should be well established in Los Angeles by now. It is not. But at the end of the year, if I'm Lincoln Riley making a pitch to Jen Cohen as to why this season didn't go as planned or why next year will be better, it's, well, we brought in a new defensive coordinator this year, and it's year 1, and we feel like we've made strides. And guess what? They have strides. They have not reached the finish line. They have run a significant chunk of the marathon on defense, but they still have a ways to go because improved scheme has to be matched by great personnel. When you watch USC's defense, do you see a lot of great personnel? You see a couple impact transfers, guys like Kamari Ramsey or Achille Arnold at the safety position, both a couple of transfers that they brought in. But you have to build a roster through high school recruiting. You have to primarily, not entirely, but primarily have your 2 deep filled out with blue chip prospects at every position. And USC doesn't have the right horses. They might even have blue chip guys that were rated as such when they came out of high school. But when you watch that USC defense, do you see a lot of big time impact guys? I see a defense that is much better from a year ago. They tackle better, they're scheme better, they don't have blown assignments. Danton Lynn, the defensive coordinator, is what I thought. He's an improvement. But here's the other thing that has to worry you if you're a USC fan. In the last 2 games, losses to Maryland and Penn State at home, in which you had a 14-point lead in both, you have seen the 2 things you thought you could rely on, that you could count on for USC, falter. Your head coach and your offense. Because who else do you assign blame to when you blow a 14-point lead? Got to look at the head coach first. And that's where USC fans are looking. That's where they should be looking. But the 2 things that you know, well, Lincoln Riley's won a lot of football games. He's been in close games before and won a lot of them. Well, Lincoln Riley coordinates the offense, so you know that's going to be good. They have not been good situationally. You can attribute that to Miller Moss's first year as a starter. He does not look like the same guy from early in the season. He does not show the same sort of moxie that a different first-year starter, Garrett Nussmeier, has shown in the last few weeks on several occasions. But USC's offense is not as good as Trojan fans should expect it to be. The defense, I think, is right about where it should be, but isn't quite ready. So the offense has taken a step back, and the defense has taken a step forward, but the regression on offense right now is outweighing the improvement on defense. So this is going to be given more time. You don't have to like Lincoln Riley. You can think he should be fired. I don't think USC is going to fire him. It's year one in a new conference. They're learning how these road trips work. It can be a lot of things to deal with as a football team when you go on the road, particularly to places you haven't been before. Can you get guys in the right mindset when you have to, switch hotels at the last minute? I don't think that's happened, at least not that I have heard. But when you go to new places, you go on longer trips, there's an impact. This is not something that is media crafted. This sort of stuff has an impact, and USC is not adapting well to it right now. And the Michigan loss, all right, that one stings because Michigan threw for 32 yards, won the football game. But all right, it was on the road. Michigan's really good in the trenches and whatnot. All right, we can forgive that. Minnesota, Maryland, and you missed the upset potential against Penn State. It's all unacceptable. It's all completely unacceptable. But USC is stuck with Lincoln Riley. First year of a new defensive coordinator, third year of a 10-year contract. Yeah, he's not going anywhere. So Trojan fans will just have to deal with it. And LSU fans are perfectly content at the moment to sit with Brian Kelly, who I think is a good football coach. Always have. And I thought LSU would lose this game against Arkansas. So USC, that's an outright lose feeling if you are a Trojan fan, because you should feel terrible that you went all the way across the country to Maryland just to lose. And LSU, give me an outright win here, because they have proven once again that they are an SEC title contender. Yet to lose a conference game, mind you. They lost to that USC team in week 1. Remember the parallels between these teams? Replacing Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, third-year head coaches who signed big contracts that came from high-profile schools, new defensive staffs because they were a complete and utter disaster. Those defensive staff changes, bringing Blake Baker over from Missouri, paying dividends there in Baton Rouge. They go on the road, give up 10 points to an Arkansas offense that has been really good this season. Boy, I was impressed with LSU. I was really impressed that they went on the road and win this game. And as I've said all year, I'm not a guy that does a big switcheroo and says, well, maybe this team isn't that good. No, I think Arkansas is a pretty solid football team. I picked them to upset LSU for a reason. This game was a point spread of under a field goal for a reason, and LSU goes in and wins 34-10? 34-10? If that defense is going to play at that level, and Caden Durham can run the ball to the tune of just under 5 yards of carry and 3 touchdowns and score on second down and goal from like the 20-yard line or whatever it was, and you have Garrett Nussmeier at quarterback, I think LSU's offense plays complementary football very well, but if their defense makes it a well-rounded effort, everybody better watch out in the SEC. So LSU's upcoming schedule, they've got this team known as Texas A&M on the road this week. It's going to be fantastic. At Kyle Field, Texas A&M playing good football, got more of a challenge than some people might have thought against Mississippi State last week. Bulldogs feel like they're on the verge of pulling an upset at some point the rest of this season, but if UCLA can win a game, why not Mississippi State? LSU at Texas A&M. There's no game I'm more interested in watching in college football this week. Certainly not in the SEC. They've got Alabama the following week. They still have to play Vanderbilt. But I think LSU is going to be a favorite to win most of their games coming down the stretch. Even if they lose this game against Texas A&M, they could still play in the SEC championship game, because they've got Alabama at home. They go at Florida, who's playing much better football. They host Vanderbilt. They'll be okay. They host Oklahoma. The Sooners are not any good, and they're not ready to play in the SEC just yet. They could be one day. They're certainly not right now. This is an LSU team that everyone should be worried about, that everyone should be aware of what they're capable of, because on any given day, they feel like they could win with defense, they could win with offense, they could lean on the run game, they could lean on the pass game. avoid a disaster on special teams, and this is a really well-rounded unit for Brian Kelly and company. And I like Garrett Nussmeier. I like Garrett Nussmeier a lot. I'm a Seahawks fan. Got a nice win against Falcons over the weekend. Not so sure I don't want them to take Garrett Nussmeier at this point if he's available. The more I watch the guy, the more I think, gosh, he looks like he's making NFL reads, NFL throws, and he's just got that it factor. LSU, very much for real. And at the start of the season, they lose to USC. And remember, USC's in the ascension mode, and LSU's on the decline. Brian Kelly's just got the boys playing hard, playing well, playing focused, and unbeaten in SEC play. We'll see if that continues this week. Let me know your thoughts in YouTube comments or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter. Someone's going to win the Big 12. I don't know. This league is so much fun. I don't know what to make of the Big 12 anymore. I'll try to make sense of another crazy weekend in the Big 12. That's coming up next. First, a reminder, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Game Time, which has Game Time Picks. Do you know what that does? It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, whatever you want. Game Time's got it. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy, and they've got their lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Do you know what time it is? I do. It's game time. I give up on the Big 12, man. Is Iowa State the best team in the conference? I don't know. They could be. They haven't lost a football game yet. Neither is BYU. Cougars feel like they're destined to lose a game at some point. Wait, so does Iowa State. Hey, Colorado's really good. You see what they did to Arizona? Well, some of us didn't think Arizona was good before the year. Some of us also thought Utah would be good, but Utah doesn't have a healthy quarterback. Now they don't have an offensive coordinator either. They found a way to lose to TCU at home. That's not a place that they normally lose, but alas, they did. Kansas State, by the way, looks really good. They're 6-1. They went to West Virginia and steamrolled the Mountaineers by the tune of 45-18. Kansas won, whoop-de-doo. Cincinnati is 5-2 and 3-1 in conference play. Texas Tech flopped. I mean flopped against Baylor at home. You want the biggest outright loser in the Big 12 this week? That's Texas Tech down in Lubbock. Iowa State gets a lean win here because they pulled it out, and that's all it's going to take in this conference. But I am legitimately at my wit's end trying to figure out what's going to happen in this league every week. An 0-3 team had a 3-0 team on the ropes, Oklahoma State and BYU. And a 1-2 team had a 3-0 team on the ropes, and they got it done. And Arizona was kind of a trendy pick before the year. Here's the thing. There were so many teams in the Big 12 I was very right on. Arizona State, not going to finish in last. Better than you think. Colorado, much improved football team from a season ago. Texas Tech, very solid. Arizona, not a Big 12 title contender. And then there are a bunch of teams that I was really right. Oklahoma State also falls in that category. Then there are a bunch of teams I was really wrong on. Utah's going to win the Big 12. No, they're not. Cam Rising's made of glass, might come back for an 8th year. I don't even know what to make of that situation. They got a new offensive coordinator. Why? Because their offense is a disaster area. Utah cannot score the football. They give up 13 points at home. You needed 2 touchdowns and 2 extra points to win the game. Yeah, Utah season, for all intents and purposes, very much over. Speaking of defense, Texas Tech doesn't know how to play any of it again. They had fixed this issue. They suffered their first Big 12 loss at the hands of Baylor. At the hands of Baylor? Their defense had been better. 22 against Arizona State, 41 against Cincinnati, not great. But they won 22 against Arizona. That was on the road. Then you come back at home and you give up a near 60 piece to Baylor. Baylor gets the outright win label because, oh my gosh, they won a football game. Woohoo! Maybe Baylor will make a bowl game. I still doubt it. I don't think they're good. That's just a bad showing from Texas Tech. You should never lose a game by 20-plus points at home when you score 35. It's a classic Big 12 matchup there. Colorado, 3-1 in the Big 12. I would still like to see them pick. By the way, of all the preseason upset picks that I threw out there, was there a better one than Colorado over Arizona? 34-7. Oh man, Arizona. Arizona's a mess. It turns out, here's the interesting thing about Colorado and Arizona. They are both driven by two players, a quarterback and a wide receiver. Now, Travis Hunter, of course, plays both ways. But coming into this year, I thought, Arizona's got Fafita and T-Mac. That's great. But you need more than two guys to win a conference or even, a lot of games. Well, Arizona fans didn't like hearing that very much. Well, it turns out you need more than a couple guys. Well, Colorado's got more than a couple guys. The wide receiving core is just nasty. And even when Shedeur Sanders was making mistakes, Arizona couldn't capitalize. And I remember a very specific video that I did many weeks ago. It was after, I think, the North Dakota State game for Colorado. The classic trap game. Oh, upset special. And I was like, no, they're not losing the football game. There was a fluky play that made it closer than it was. Colorado's a better team. And everyone flipped on Colorado. Well, it's an FCS team, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, well, you guys were telling me it was an upset potential beforehand. You don't get to have your cake and eat it too. My take after the game was, yeah, this is a better Colorado team than last year. They look improved. They don't look great. Saw that against Nebraska, but they look improved. And I got pushback on that. And I was like, are we watching the same game? People were wondering if I was watching the same game. Tell me. Do you think last year's Colorado team goes on the road and gives up 7 points to Arizona? Maybe Arizona scores more with Jed Fish as the play caller instead of what the Wildcats have got rolling in the offensive staff room this year. But I'm just saying, 34-7, that's the second time in the last 3 weeks that Colorado's gone on the road and blown somebody out. You can hate Colorado all you want. You can love Colorado all you want. We all have to look at the data that we are getting. This isn't happening on paper. This is happening in real time. We have to be able to look at the data and say, Colorado's a pretty good team. Are they a great team? No. They have not convinced me they are a great team, that they're a Big 12 title contender. If you ask me to do Big 12 power rankings of who I think is the best team, Colorado's probably fourth. Gosh, TCU should be so much higher, but they just haven't been able to figure it out this year. But Colorado's probably fourth. I'd put the teams in front of them that are ahead of them in the Big 12 standings. Why? Because they've been more impressive this year. They have been more impressive, but Colorado has not been unimpressive. At this point in the year, I thought Colorado would have 4 wins. They've got 5. They play Cincinnati at home this week. Now, speaking of teams I was wrong on in the Big 12, Scott Satterfield and company playing some pretty good football. You look up, and they're 3-1. But here's just for those listening on podcasts, and I don't have a graphic to put up on YouTube, so I guess you'll get the same experience here. The conference standings go like this. BYU 4-0, Iowa State 4-0, Kansas State 3-1, Texas Tech 3-1, so they're not technically out of it. That's just such a bad loss to Baylor of all teams. But not going to kill you in a head-to-head with any of the other conference title contenders because Baylor isn't that. Colorado 3-1. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, look at that. 6 teams that could get to the conference championship game. You have a trio of teams at 2-2, ASU, TCU, and West Virginia. I don't think I trust any of those teams to push towards the top. And somehow Oklahoma State is on the bottom. Didn't think they'd be great. Well, didn't pick them to be last place either. You've got 6 teams. 6 teams that can go win the conference championship right now. What other conference can say that? The ACC can't say that. Maybe SMU could do it, but Clemson and Miami are clearly better than everybody else. In the SEC, you've got Georgia. You got Texas that could do it. Doesn't look like Alabama can do it. They've got 2 conference losses. That usually removes you from the conference title game picture, particularly in the SEC. And Tennessee's got 1 loss already. They still have to play Georgia on the road. The Big 12 coming into this year was viewed by many, myself included, as the deepest, most exciting conference title race. It's living up to that billing, if not always in the let me try that again. If not always in the way that we expected it to. Because you have seen teams elevate to a place not everyone thought they could get to. You've seen teams have massive letdowns. But the gap between the top and bottom of this conference is smaller than any other league. You know how I know that? The last place team had the first place team on the ropes. 4th and 7, own side of the 35-yard line. Don't convert that, and BYU's got a loss to Oklahoma State. Vanderbilt's not the bottom of the SEC. Mississippi State is. And Mississippi State not going to beat somebody at the top of the conference. I've watched them try. They put up valiant efforts. Was not as close. So that's what makes this so much fun. It is just pure quality entertainment. And if you're listening to this segment now thinking, Spencer, who do you think is going to win the Big 12? I don't know. Pick any, and I mean any, including Colorado, including why not Cincinnati, including Kansas State, anyone of those top 6 right now. Throw a blind shot at a dartboard, and I'll go with your pick. Whoever you want. Can't wait to keep watching it. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.